Today we have the honour of meeting the force of nature that is Stu Macdonald, founder of ManiLife Peanut Butter. He shares his inspiring journey from a challenging childhood illness to becoming a successful entrepreneur. He discusses the inception of the brand, the innovative product development process, and how a mistake led to his best-selling product. He reflects on his changing role within the company and the significance of team dynamics. The discussion also touches on the challenges of leadership, the value of personal connection, and the insights gained from overcoming a burnout. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah.
Stu, thank you very much for joining us. So Stu is the founder of ManiLife Peanut Butter, which we're going to hear a lot about. I'm glad I've had my lunch, otherwise I'd be very hungry. But welcome on board, Stu.
Thanks, Steve. Very excited to be here. I like your background's a lot cooler than mine. I'm actually in my mother-in-law's kitchen, but I don't pretend there's bricks. I might do a brick filter.
When I've done, I'll take a picture of this and you can just put it as a backdrop for other things.
Perfect.
Obviously, being an agency, you've got to have bricks and exposed steel and things like that. Yeah, living the dream. Anyway, not about me. Let's kick off. It's really good. We've found in the past with the podcast is if you can give us a bit of a history of, potted history of how you've got here first of all, and then we'll dig back into it. But it's good so people can understand. How are you the founder of this marvellous business and what's it standing for? And then I'll quiz you deeply about what you say.
Okay, cool. I never know how far back to go with this, but I'll just start and we'll see how it goes. So, son of a very loving parents that fortunately is still together, and probably unsurprisingly the middle child of three brothers.
Well, we could unpick that later. Middle child syndrome, can't we?
Yeah, and it's very true. Very fortunate to have grown up, like, one in this country, but two to dad's a doctor and mum's dentist. So it was always, I don't really like the word privilege, but I was always aware that, like, very lucky cards. When I was 15, I got, like, very, very ill at school, to the extent that it was, like, life-changing, and most of the people I spoke to at the time, in terms of, like, the medical profession, believed it was going to be life-altering. Like, I think I was told to pare back my aspirations, which obviously didn't do. But I think what that did is it developed, like, a little bit of a chip on my shoulder's the wrong word, but that's what I always say. It also developed, there was this sense, I know I'm not supposed to swear, but I call it, like, fuck you motivation. And I remember that
didn't take long. That's a minute.
Yeah. I know. But I won't do it again. So that was there. That can plant the seed. So from that moment, I always had in the back of my mind that I was going to try and do something a bit out of the ordinary. And then I went to university. I went to Bristol, and I got a job offer to be an accountant at PwC, which is, for, like, where I grew up, pretty much the most ordinary profession one could do. And so I didn't really fancy it, and decided that I would put it off and moved to Argentina, where the idea was I was basically going to go there and build up enough guilt to become an accountant for 3 years. Arrived, really randomly fell into working with a peanut butter social enterprise. We used to go around soup kitchens giving kids and families, and can teach them how to use it, because it's a magic product. And through that, very quickly, one, developed an interest in the product, but also kind of demystified the idea of starting a business, because the guy I did it with, like, he was as average a bloke as I was. And I think at the time I actually thought even more average, quite arrogantly. So I could probably have a go at this. So I started experimenting with recipes, my friend's kitchen out there, selling to, like, local community, and the interest started to grow, until I eventually met the family that we still source our peanuts from today. And I met them. I absolutely love them. I still speak to them most weeks. But their product was also incredible. And it was around this time that I looked at the market back home and saw that whilst it was growing, no one was speaking about peanut butter the same way you spoke about coffee or chocolate or wine. In particular, there was no provenance, but it was, like, completely commoditized, no craft whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2015, I came home with the idea of starting ManiLife, which was going to be the world's first provenance-led peanut butter brand. And Mani means peanut in Argentine Spanish. It's going to be magic, only like, it wasn't magic. It was a complete disaster, because the day the first ton of peanuts arrived, our production partner pulled out. So I had a literal ton of peanuts in 25 kilo bags in my bedroom with nowhere to make it.
How to give some people how much is that? How much is a ton of peanuts? I'm assuming it filled your bedroom.
Yeah, so it did. So on the pallet, it is like 1.2 meters by 1.2 meters, and it's like 2 meters high, so it's a lot. So it filled my entire bedroom. Anyway, had that, and I managed to get this article published in the Grocer, basically looking for a factory. Didn't get anything from that. So basically, that summer, got together about 45 friends, rented out my old Rugby Club kitchen, bought 2 little kitchen blenders, and spent the entire summer making 4,000 jars of peanut butter, 1 jar at a time. And that was the beginning. And it was hell, but it was formative for 3 reasons. One, we kind of developed this like I hate the word hustle, but like hustle culture. So we'll always find a way. And that's played out again and again and again in our history. 2, we transitioned from what was ultimately going to be like a co-manufactured, provenance-led brand. It's a very long answer, which is ultimately very copyable. And Provenance, since we've launched, has become part of like the peanut butter thing, into a brand that made the products in a way that no one else had done to that date. So we make peanut butter differently to how the market makes it. To the extent that you can't make ManiLife in a peanut butter factory. And so a lot of our quality was seeded then. And the last thing is we invented a product called deep roast peanut butter completely by accident, which is like the greatest innovation in peanut butter for the last 80 years. When we burnt a load of nuts and came up with a great name for burnt peanut butter. And that's still the best name we can think of. And yeah, it's like our best product. Yeah.
It's pure marketing at its best, isn't it?
Yeah. But what's funny is like, that's what lots of people say. And it kind of is, it is really good marketing. But it's like completely true. I can send you pictures of the first deep roast jars. It was just like black pen, and we wrote limited offer on it because we thought it might not
You'll
sell.
never make
and it sold. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's like it's the greatest product, greatest innovation in peanut butter since peanut butter was invented, which is crazy. So that's how we started, and then obviously like we can get into it, but mad journey over the last 9 years, and we are where we are today.
Yeah, because you had a bit of time, like you had a little play at being an accountant in the middle of that, didn't you? But luckily you escaped.
Yeah, so what happened was, started the summer, got into a few shops, started selling, but because I was basically, my friends were working with me for nothing, and I wasn't making any money, even with that, and I had this job, I decided that I would basically, thought permanently, but shut ManiLife and become an accountant. And then within about 3 weeks of starting as an accountant, I started getting phone calls from customers being like, where is it? And then, one thing led to another. And I was like making peanut butter on the weekends and then in the evenings. And then I actually remember quite well, I spoke to one of the partners there and I asked him for a year off to give it a go. And he basically laughed at me and was like, absolutely not.
Are you mad?
Yeah, exactly. That's fair enough. And so I quit in the room thinking that it was going to be this really dramatic thing. And then I forgot that I had a month's notice and obviously had to work a month's notice. So it was yeah. But I mean...
You had been watching too much of The Apprentice, hadn't you?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm out. Yeah,
I mean, by the end, it was an absolute piss take. I was like, so embarrassing. And they must have thought I was such an arrogant, like, SHIT. Because I was like taking calls about like peanut orders and new customers in like partners' offices, which was just ludicrous. But they, to be fair to them, they've been very supportive since, and I think hopefully we'll be big enough to work with PwC one day, but not quite yet.
That's it. Yeah, it's like, isn't it? Like life's a long journey, and you realise you've got to keep friends all the way across because you'll end up coming across them again in the future.
Exactly.
But I think it's good, isn't it? You know, we talked a lot about. We try and cover as much of the podcast about you and things, but it's like what you learn when it went wrong, when, you know, you suddenly thought, I haven't got somebody to make my product, which is quite a daunting thing at that early stage of running your own business, isn't it? Yeah, it's like, okay. But then also, you know, you tried something else, and as much of life, you know, people I think are sometimes worried about starting something.
Yeah.
But not everything works. You'll know that even now when I'm sure you brought stuff out that's not quite hit the mark, and unless you learn from it and you develop from it, you don't really get anywhere, do you?
Yeah. My dad always used to say that, he still something says it now, but it was like the most important thing about a decision isn't what it is, it's just making it in the first place. And so long as like 51% of them are right, you're doing all right. I actually think you need less than that. But there's a real value in like motion. And I think a lot of people come unstuck, particularly earlier in their careers, by like getting stuck in their heads. Ironically, I think as businesses build, like the values of a great leader at different stages, like the kind of CEO of a multi-million pound business is more strategic, more thoughtful, a bit slower because like the machine is moving. But like it's very rare that character is also what's needed at the beginning.
Yeah.
And so either you develop from the beginning or you do what we've done, and we've kind of built a team around me that does a much better job than I would.
But I think that's it, isn't it? You've got to have a vision. You've got to have someone that can drive that. But the skills then to operate as a business grows are very different. And you've obviously been through, in those, nearly 9 years, you've had many jobs, haven't you, even within your own business, and you've worked out, I like that, and I'm actually quite good at it. I'm rubbish at that. And we do, didn't it? And so it's like there are loads of professionals surrounding us, and obviously one of your drivers for growth is to make sure you can afford to get a great FD or a great production person or a great general manager.
Yeah. And it's funny that actually because like the ops and finance role, because this perception that like it doesn't bring in money, that is often resourced a lot later than I think it should be. Because generally, like the founder energy is more front end, more sales and marketing. And what I realized very late was if you get that bit right, one, it like frees you up to grow the top line in a way that doesn't like depress you. But also, like obviously, a really good ops and finance person, they like save loads of money.
Yeah.
And the great thing about saving money is it goes like straight to the bottom line, whereas sales, like you've got there's a load of cost associated with it. So I think that's probably one of the greatest fallacies or greatest mistakes in like startup land is that the back end is deprioritized for too long.
Yeah, and you busk it and you make mistakes, and those mistakes, like you say, cost actual money.
Yeah.
Whereas a salesperson not quite hitting the levels that you want is different, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
But you learn that the hard way.
Yeah. So, and I actually don't think there's a way to learn it that isn't the hard way, because you need to like go through the pain, or a very, very convincing mentor.
So can I dig back a bit, and then we'll come back to the ManiLife offer and where it's going. In terms of, obviously you had that illness at school and stuff, and it gave you that sort of like inner drive to prove everybody wrong, isn't it? It sounds like it's quite interesting that not a public one, but something you're going to say.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Got a thumbs up there.
Yeah. That's good. Amazing.
Look, you see, destiny. But I think it's interesting, isn't it, that people set up businesses for many reasons. Now, interestingly, you saw that peanut that's happening in Argentina, and you came back, and like you say, it's not exactly, or it wasn't exactly a growing sector, was it, in the UK at that time?
No, at the time it was. At the time it was growing. It was growing pretty fast. It was like 15% a year.
Oh wow!
Because it was but the thing about it that I thought about it that was interesting was it was growing, but it was growing because peanut butter was becoming like a health food. It was still it was still ultimately the same product. There was a brand that had launched that was like had brought a little bit of like youth and I guess like I hate the word vibe, but like vibe into quite a stale category. But it was ultimately the same stuff. And for me, it was so obvious that like the peanut butter and coffee supply chains are very, very similar. But coffee had this like amazing, really deep, like multi-layered world with incredible products and some not great ones. Whereas peanut butter was still smooth and crunchy, and that was basically it.
And that was it. And you like you say, it was hard to differentiate, wasn't it? Between it was whoever had the most shelf space, wasn't it? Really, that dominated it. And I know there's a lot more come through, and there's a health angle. And so, did you believe you could take that market through the provenance angle, which is you were ahead of the curve there? And many products have sort of reinvented themselves backwards, haven't they now?
Yeah. Well, So quite tragically, I'd come up from Argentina, and I just really liked Argentina. And I was like, these guys have really good peanuts, but no one knows about it. And I kind of seen the kind of cliche of like Colombian coffee, and ironically Belgian chocolate, even though no chocolate comes from Belgium. And I was like, so that was the initial angle. And then what became increasingly obvious is like the world of craft, which is now an insanely overused word, is more than just provenance. It's like product stories. It's production methods that create better products. It's like transparent supply chains and all this stuff. And what was really useful is we just had like the coffee playbook, and we kind of, where appropriate, put it into peanut butter. And then deep roast, which was an accident very early on, made that even more obvious, because in coffee you talk about roast.
Yeah, share that story, because we've obviously spoken about it, but it is just brilliant.
So we were in a kitchen, or the kitchen, the club kitchen, and I used to obsess over like keeping my friends entertained because they weren't getting paid, and I can't remember what we were doing, but we forgot about some nuts in the oven. We burnt them. We blended it up, and I was going to throw it out because I was upset. And one of my friends tried it, and they were like, "Hey, shoot, this tastes amazing." We all tried it, and we agreed. And I remember we sat in a little circle, and we were like, "What can we call this? What's the best thing to burn?" And I'll send you the picture. You put it on the show notes, whatever. But our original jars were these white labels, and you can see with like Sharpie, deep roast limited offer, and we actually sold it for a discount because we're like, we just need to clear this.
No one's going to buy that. Yeah.
And then suddenly it was like, wow, we got something here.
And then that's now one of your core ranges, isn't it? Within it.
Well, it's our best-selling product, and every major brand in the world has their version of it. So the brand called Jif, which is like, I think they sell something like $600 million worth of peanut butter a year, and they launched their version of that product in 2019.
I love it. So how have you managed to, because you've built the provenance, and you've got that, so a story in the nicest possible way is a story, isn't it? In terms of my background in marketing, great, that's gold, we can start with that. But obviously if the product doesn't live up or doesn't give the consumer enough to match the story, it doesn't matter how good your story is. And so how, without giving away your secret Colonel Sanders spices recipe, how are you making it better, and how are you winning in the market because of that?
So to step back for a second, we have historically been far, far better at product than we have ever been at marketing. I still think that the product, we're getting to the stage where the brand and the marketing around it is like catching up with the product.
Yeah.
But had ManiLife not been the best product in the market, I don't think we would still exist.
Yeah.
How we get there is, this sounds so cliche, but you kind of just got to try it. But ultimately, we just take more care. So we buy better peanuts than anyone. So we buy grade A whole peanuts from one family in Argentina, like best region in the world, best grower in that region, best peanut they grow, and that is unheard of in peanut butter. Peanut butter generally buy kind of cheaper. Not
because they're smashing them up.
Exactly. And I got laughed at when I initially spoke to them about wanting to buy the best peanuts. So that's one. And then how we make it is just completely different to the market. So there's two ways to make peanut butter. There's one which is called inline milling, which is an inline process, very built for scale. You pump peanuts in one end, peanut butter comes out the other, and it's two plates. One stationary, one moves around really, really fast, and they've got teeth on them. So milling, you control the size of the teeth, the gap between the plates. This is a very technical answer. And the number of times it passes through them. Millers will talk about micron size, and that's like their variable. ManiLife doesn't know its micron size because we produce using a different method, which is small batch, fast cycle production. And the awesome but also painful thing about that is, even though we're trying to make it a science, the list of variables that impacts the product is so vast that it is ultimately like art form. And what's wild is like, I didn't realize how much IP was being built up as we were developing this, because you don't know, but like there is an insane amount of stuff that we kind of implicitly and now explicitly understand to develop the product. And what it basically delivers is a texture that you can't get with inline milling. And we do some kind of wild stuff with our crunch that I just can't tell you.
Yeah, exactly. But
But
you're
it's
also
all
not adding some nasties like palm oil
No,
bits and pieces
yeah,
like some of the
yeah.
other guys do.
And it's funny because it's like, for me, that's such a nothing point because that we are in the kind of unstabilized, all natural sector of the market. But we need to constantly remind ourselves that most people, and this is just starting to change, most people grew up with pretty average, like multi-ingredient, rock hard peanut butter. Something that's happened which is quite recent is, so for a long time, so when you don't stabilize peanut butter, this is again very technical, the oil that is released from the peanuts rises to the top and the pulp sinks to the bottom. And for years, people would see that and see that as like a sign of a bit of an ick. It was a put off.
And nearly bid it, yeah.
Exactly. But then what's happened is over the years that people have kept on experiencing that. And we've reached a tipping point where that's now seen as like a quality stamp. And so what's happening in the market now is brands like ManiLife, which are unstabilized, are booming. And brands like Sunpat, Whole Earth, Own Label are all to various degrees in decline. And I think that's because of that tipping point.
Yeah. And their product's much clackier, isn't it, in your mouth and stuff like that. So
yeah, and it's much less versatile, right? Like you can't stir a hard product through a sauce, but you can do ManiLife. And as peanut butter becomes more of like an everyday ingredient and less of a spread, it lends itself to kind of our world.
absolutely.
I hope your listeners are interested in the technicalities of peanut butter, Stu, because otherwise it's been very boring.
Every day, Stu, is a school day. We've all got this. You know, we all need that next story at the dinner party. There you go. Now we know.
Yeah.
We can ask, go into people's cupboards now and go, where's your oil? Oh, you got no oil.
Yeah.
Oh, dear me. Chuck it out. So you've obviously you sold it yourself, and then you've gone down some of the retailers' routes. So how's that been as a journey?
A journey is probably a fair summary. I think we probably got into major retail far later than a brand of our kind of, I guess, quality would do. And that was really because I just didn't know what we were doing. But what that meant is by the time we got into Waitrose, like we built quite a solid base.
Yeah.
And like the independent trade, for me, they're a much smaller part of the business now, but from like an emotional perspective, they're still the most important because they can launched us. One of the things that we got very lucky with is, so when people try ManiLife, they tend to love it and they tend to tell their friends, or at least a certain number will. And so when we were Waitrose, it was like the snowball went from small to bigger and etc. Then in 2020, lockdown hit, and we were at that stage probably under distributed for the kind of quality brand we were. But when everything moved online, it like democratized access to the consumer, and we had really great setup online we were the best reviewed peanut butter on Amazon, and all of a sudden our business, it kind of like quadrupled overnight, and then we won a few listings that year, and it's kind of just kept going.
And so that got you into other retailers as well, did it? The fact that they'd seen
it aligned with getting into other retailers. We had Sainsbury's lined up, we had Co-op lined up for that year. But yeah, the kind of retailer rollout has probably taken us more time than it would otherwise. But to some extent, the amount of time it's taken has served us because we've kind of built from a solid base.
Yeah, and how's the market now in terms of growth, or is it?
So peanut butter is growing slightly. It's like single-digit percentages, but it's very much a tale of like winners and losers. So ManiLife, like we grew 70% this year. I think about that 6-7%. And so we're the fastest growing percentage-wise peanut butter, but there are other brands in the space that are in like double-digit decline.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think that is probably because of the shift to stabilized and the fact of the shift away from stabilized products, to more natural, and the fact that people are just discovering that like peanut butter can be something like genuinely mesmerizingly delicious.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really interesting things around. So I lost train of thought, but so UK, we're gonna have to do some serious editing here, Steve. But in the UK, guess what percentage of households buy peanut butter?
30?
It's interesting. I guess because I live in peanut butter land, I think it'd be way higher, but it's about 42%.
Right.
So I think quite low. And guess how many times a year they buy it?
A couple of times a year?
Yeah.
Twice?
Again, I think it's some peanut butter. I thought the average ManiLife consumer buys us like 4 or 5 times a year.
Wow.
But UK peanut butter is 1.8 times a year. And the reason that is, so my view, low penetration and low frequency. And that's one, because it's a planned purchase in a quiet part of the supermarket. And two, because there is a legacy of average products.
Of crap product, yeah.
And so
yeah.
the more people we get into like mind-blowing products like ManiLife, that will, one, drive penetration, but also like it's very hard to only buy ManiLife 2 times a year from what we see in the data.
Yeah. Are you seeing that?
Like all of the gone.
So I was going to say, are you seeing consumption increase? Because obviously there's quite a big health use now, isn't there, of peanut butter in both recipes. I mean, you've got your own book, which I was looking through. It looks fantastic. But also a lot of people will talk about adding it to pretty much everything. You know, you have it with your bananas, on your toast, on your whatever. So can you see that side? Is that the side that's driving some of that growth?
So the like heavy purchasers tend to have an element of like function in their consumption, because peanut butter is, to a great extent, it's like a functional ingredient.
Yeah.
We're strong there, but we intentionally don't market as function. Our super strength is just the best tasting product there is.
Yeah.
And so what we try to drive is it is the ingredient that you can have any time of day, as well as like a standout kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Unadulterated snack.
Yeah.
There's loads of science as to why peanut butter is the greatest ingredient, one of the greatest ingredients on the planet, that I'm hesitant to get into because we've already got so technical. But I see a lot of the growth in peanut butter being this, taking it from spread to kind of breakfast staple to all day staple ingredient.
It's interesting you mentioned that, isn't it, about the functional side, because the ManiLife brand is very positive, isn't it? And it's very, well, as you say, it's about life, it's about a movement, it's about enjoying. And I suppose you've got to be careful to keep that balance, haven't you, with it? But I suppose a great product made with the very best ingredients is what actually most functional needs are met, isn't it? Because it's like, well, that's the best one if you're going to have it.
Yeah. It's funny because I get quite nervous, or not nervous, I get quite bored marketing to health.
Yeah.
Because one, I think it's quite sterile, and like we are an unadulterated, very healthy peanut butter. But like I said, that is not our super strength. Like we are the top of health peanut butter, but there are other brands that have similar health credentials to us. Our super strength is like taste and texture and like indulgence.
Yeah.
And because of that, we intentionally shy away from marketing to function. However, I think you're right. I think there is this like merging of the two where people are now no longer willing to accept like pure function and like disgusting taste credentials. That's maybe something we could and perhaps should review. But I think right now we're like food first, food over function. It's something we repeat.
I think you can do. I think you, like you say, without getting into the detail again. But it's interesting, you know, if the core product's good, it's then just about making sure that the different markets find it for their use, isn't it? Without affecting one side, because they're very different markets, aren't they? A family having great peanut butter, or against someone who wants it from a real functional point of view. So let's go back to you, Stu, because we've talked far too much about peanuts now. As that business is,
I'm realizing it's really quite boring.
Well, we'll just go back onto functional peanut butter
Sorry,
again.
Steve. We'll
If
just
we
have to record this again and do
Yeah, yeah.
another take.
No, not in the slightest. I love it. So, how as the business has grown, and you've obviously, if you're growing like that, you're going to continue to grow both in terms of ability to produce and the team that you need. How has your role changed, and how are you coping with that as a character that you are?
So, as one might expect, it's been a kind of journey. I think something which is probably quite clear from our chat just now and chats before is I have a like significant bias to action. And so in the early days, whilst it's quite high stress, like that's very useful because you just need to like get out of the trenches. And I was very like active leader. As the team began to grow and the biz became more complex, because of my bias to action, I think on reflection, I wasn't very deliberate about how I like built the machine. And so what ended up happening is we had a great team, a decent sized team, but my role became like filling the gaps that the team weren't doing, which ultimately meant I was just doing stuff I was about to swear again, like hated, and not really getting out and about, which is something that energizes me a lot, and ultimately just like not enjoying it at all, which one wasn't very good for me and two wasn't very good for the business, and that kept going for me 3 years, until I basically burnt out, like horrendously. And we can talk about that if you want. And then the phoenix that has risen from the ashes of that burnout is just pure magic. And so what we have now is promoted ops and finance director to be MD, runs the business, does a fantastic job. Love him. I think the team love him too. And so he handles a lot of the stuff that very deliberately that I didn't really enjoy. And that has meant that my role is kind of the dream job. So I lead on innovation. I lead on like, I guess, the deals side of sales, but not sales in particular. So I'm kind of like the face of sales.
Yeah.
So they can roll me out. I do podcasts. And I'm
It's not your first one. I thought you were mine.
Exactly. And I guess I'm kind of like the brand guardian. So it is, and ironically, I do what I spend my time doing now, apart from being a bit heavier on development, is what I spent all of my time doing at the early days, which was out and about with customers, out and about with consumers, like thinking up the next thing. So yeah, it's amazing. And I think one of the things that a lot of founders fall into the trap of thinking is because they started it, they need to manage it. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of coined this phrase, which is a bit embarrassing, but it's like you can be founder-led but not founder-managed. And I think ultimately, like, an MD is a pretty serious job that people train for a long, long time to do well. And once you kind of get over the ego thing of it, it's pretty liberating.
Yeah, I think there's some interesting things you said there. It's like, without obviously starting to talk about yourself in the third person and having this, you are a manifestation of the ManiLife brand, aren't you? From your character, from meeting you before and seeing now the stuff I've seen out there, I can see it. And I think it's a genius move to understand what you are and what you aren't as well, isn't it? Because like you say, there's an assumption as a founder that you're going to do everything. And you have to do it at some stage because there aren't the pennies there to get the skilled people in. But as soon as that's in place, the quicker you can move that. And then look, imagine if you'd answered that question 2 years ago, I think we'd have stopped recording.
We wouldn't be here because I wouldn't have no time and I'd probably be at home crying.
It's not working.
But
it's interesting. You bring an energy now and a verve into the business that you've got a great MD operator who can make that dream grow, can't you?
And not just MD operator, like he is built, I mean, we kind of built it together, but very much he's led on building the senior team that supports him. So like the whole machine just works so much smoother. And I think again, early days very important and lots of value, but there is an obsession with like speed and energy. And one of the things that, again, I think this is a cliche, but one of the things that dawned on me or us more recently is like speed is great, but really slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Mm-hmm. And that's definitely a cliche phrase, but it's very true.
Yeah, it is.
Chaos can be quite wasteful.
Yeah, and I think it is. And within that, to chuck that analogy of there's a lot of chat nowadays with everything you read about failing and failing fast and all that. Yeah. And I just think you have to fail because you don't learn. There's no way anybody's going to be, running a business for 7, 8, 10 years and not have failed, if not they're not being true to themselves. But also, I would suggest if you haven't, you've not pushed and not driven.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's that idea of don't go too quickly that the organisation can't keep up.
And that becomes increasingly true as the organisation gets bigger.
Yeah. So how have you found sort of giving control over for certain areas of decision making? It's not easy, is it?
I mean, initially really tough. I think easier because the people are great. And also we come things from a very different like energy and experience. So Johnny's come up with the ops for finance. I guess Arm. I've come up whatever Arm. I guess more front end. They don't really have an arm. It just kind of came up, which that helps. Now, fine. I mean, there's obviously habits that are built over time which we need to manage, and that's the jumping in habit. But I think pretty well. I'm not sure you'd get the same answer from them, but I think it's definitely a transition though. Definitely over a period of time. It took a while. But now
I think it is. As much as you've got to trust them, they've got to trust you to let go, haven't they, at your own pace as well. Otherwise, you'll become not much fun to work with either. And it's like you say, it's a delicate balance. But you'll realise the business can't continue to grow without that, separation of roles and the responsibilities as it grows from that. So what, in terms of that innovation, then what does the future look like? I mean, is there loads going on?
So.
Look how you just look how you just come alive when I've asked you about. Here we go.
How are the OKRs and KPIs doing?
Come on, let's get those out.
So we haven't spoken about this, but at the start of the year, we finally, after many years of kind of flirting with it, set up our own production facility. Historically, we've had our own kit, but we put it in third-party operators. And so what that is going to enable us to do, one, from a product quality perspective, but two, from an innovation perspective, is like off the charts. So zooming out for a second, one of the challenges with peanut butter is that, as I said earlier, it is a planned purchase in a very quiet part of the supermarket. So I think our kind of thesis on how we grow that is we transition elements of it into being more impulse. And what is impulse? So you get formats that enable us to be in more places. So like where you find crisps, you can now find, or will be able to soon find, peanut butter related products. But also if you think about impulse and how impulse and flavors interact, I think there's a real opportunity in doing that well. Historically, flavors and peanut butter have always failed because they've launched flavored peanut butter the same way they launched normal peanut butter. And like, no one goes into a supermarket planning to buy like butterscotch peanut butter. And because peanut butter is a planned purchase in a quiet part of the supermarket, they don't know about it. However, I think there is a way that we can use the kind of like drop model type thing and create very impulsive, almost like viral flavors that create loads of noise, get people who haven't thought about peanut butter into it, and then it's almost like a gateway drug into the rest of ManiLife.
Yeah.
The best example of this so far that we've had was, again, kind of luck, but it was a year ago we launched minced peanut butter on Amazon. Sold out in like a few days. And now we just bring that back every year goes bigger and bigger and bigger. And
Explain the product then. So mince pie nut butter.
So it's mince pies. Like the filling of a mince pie in peanut butter. And it is absolutely, it's fucking delicious. Like, it's unreal. And it sounds kind of weird, but it's like just weird enough, but not that it doesn't gross you out, but you're intrigued. You go in, you try it. I mean, the product's quite good. And it just, it like flies. But it only flies because it's limited time, limited space.
Yeah.
Like off shelf or really online. And then it's gone. So we're building out that model. So and that is.
And I suppose the time of year, isn't it, when people will be a bit more, we'll try a bit of that.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there's loads of different times of year with that, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see it drop in, I think, quite soon. But we've developed hot cross bun butter for Easter. That's fun. And there's just so many of these.
And your April Fool that you've just done today, that was 1st of April for anybody listening. How did that go down? Did you get some stick?
I've had quite a few texts asking if I'm joking because their office are talking about it. So yeah, there's.
So those that didn't see,
we've done a peanut butter.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think that's really exciting, and we are the only brand in the country that is equipped to do that because of how we make. Like 3 of the major brands in the UK are made in the same factory that is just purely set up for scale.
And would ever you consider the ManiLife core product being like an ingredient product for other brands? So, you know, if someone has peanut butter in either their ice cream or in their chocolate, that you'd actually become the provider.
It's a small part of the business, but it's not. But it's growing. So we are the peanut butter in Leon's SATT.
Mm-hmm.
We're the peanut butter in Hotel Chocolat's chocolate.
Yeah.
So like that is. It's not massive, but again, having our own factory means that we're able to be a bit more flexible, use up their capacity.
But it's an interesting way of, like, to your point, of someone saying, oh, if Hotel Chocolat have chosen ManiLife peanut butter, then there's something going on there. You know,
for sure.
There's so many routes, isn't there? Like you say, if they do wander down that quiet aisle, hopefully that there's some reference to either a fun thing that you've done or a collab that you've done that they go, okay, I'm going to have a go at that core product.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, ultimately, like, you can overcomplicate it, but we've got the best product on the market, and it's just about getting people to try it.
Yeah.
And we've gone through waves of overcomplicating and then back to simplifying. And I think we're more back on the simplifying route of just like, how do we get millions of people or even hundreds of people to try this in the right frame of mind near a shop?
I think, and it's interesting, isn't it? You go back again. It's a bit of a cliche, but you go do the old Pepsi challenge concept.
Mm.
If when people try when you're that confident in the product, you've just got to get people to try it because we did some stuff with Quorn last year, and on there weren't chicken nuggets, but obviously pretend chicken nuggets. Same sort of thing. People can't believe the flavour that you can get, and so but would never, by their own admitting, they'd never go and buy it. And then they try it and they go, that's better. And it's just because our minds we're terrible, aren't we? We're made up. Oh, that's just peanut butter. There's not going to be anything special.
Yeah, exactly.
So which is
why when we seeded the business, we did loads and loads of events. And the reason we did loads of events really was because, selfishly, it's because I was energized by events.
Yeah.
So we was out all the time. And it just meant that, like, the level of sampling we got in the early days when I guess lots of brands are kind of, I guess, in the office overthinking was mesmerizing.
Brilliant. I love it. You see, who'd have thought we could talk for nearly 50 minutes just about peanut butter? God, it's the future. No, don't be daft at all. So let's talk about now, let's sort of have a bit of reflection, but also look forward. So how could you see your role evolving over the next 9 years? You've been going for 9, and it sounds like probably a long time in the grand scheme of things, but
I mean,
is it more of the same from what you've been saying? If you've got this perfect role, why mess with it?
I think so. I think there's definitely an increasing requirement for, like, noisy innovation, which is where I sit. I think the kind of face of the brand, the getting out and about, and just meeting people, introducing people to the brand. There's definitely more we can do. I think one of the really exciting things about ManiLife is generally when people try it, they're mad for it. We know we're the best product in the market, and we also know hardly anyone buys us still and tries us. Like our penetration, I think, is like single digits, and our awareness is very low double digits, and we're only in 35-40% of UK distribution. So like there is so much white space.
And obviously not much to run before. Yeah, I'm going to say, not much to run before you walk back. There are other markets. Peanut butter is not just a UK thing, is it? It's obviously...
Yeah, for sure.
Is that another thing you're looking at?
Yeah, so we have a growing business in Germany. Before Brexit, we had like a pretty sizable business in Germany, like over €1 million. And then Brexit killed it. Or our inability to deal with Brexit killed it.
Yeah.
And it's been a bit of a journey to kind of build back up, but we will exceed that this year.
Brilliant. So that's where you can go, isn't it? But again,
yeah.
And does the, obviously not a literal translation, but does the positioning in the UK work across Europe? Are they getting the brand
We will. I mean, I guess we'll find out. But we definitely have a consumer there, and particularly our kind of D2C sales there are strong. I think the interesting thing about Europe is that the markets, apart from Holland, they're a bit more underdeveloped. And so when we came in, like good and better was already pretty established, and so the role for best was very clear. Less developed markets, they've kind of just got good, and better's a bit less developed.
Yeah.
My view on that is that by introducing best earlier, like people's perception of peanut butter rises earlier on, and it means that like as you go from penetration of like 15% to 20, 30, 40, rather than the average consumer buying it 1.5 times a year, they're buying it 9.5 times a year, which is 4 or 5.
Yeah.
So I think you can still do that, but there's potentially a challenge in the like whatever €1 a jar to €5 a jar.
Yeah. But I suppose there is anything, isn't it? And it's a case of you'll never sell €5 jars to everybody, but if you can get a decent market, you sort of only need to do half the sales, don't you? And you're much further ahead.
Yeah,
that's interesting. So, if you were to reflect on your huge 9-year career in peanut butter, what advice would you give to young Stuart as he's there setting off on this journey when he's got back from Argentina? Is there anything I mean, we talked earlier that you've got to make mistakes, but let's pretend we can wave a magic wand and have that insight and knowledge buried in there, but also that bit of advice to give you a leg up.
So I guess I've got the things that have dawned on me. So there's 3. One is, and I'm not sure whether I didn't know these or didn't know these at the time, but what is very clear is you don't need a good idea just to start. And the idea you have at the beginning, like ManiLife wasn't a good idea. It was just peanut butter and it developed over time. So that's number 1. And that's a bit cliche. Number 2 is that serendipity or like luck favors those that just keep going. And I think we have benefited from that in a big way. Obviously, there's a bit of selection bias in that. But it's not just about keeping going. It's about like forcing yourself to get out and about. And I think that was why the period where I was like locked to a desk, filling holes in the team was so hard, because I wasn't getting out and about. And yeah, we have benefited from luck in a major way. And I think we've played for luck quite well.
I've heard that a few times, and it's so true, isn't it? There was a guy, he spoke and he was brilliant. It was a guy that did the Bank of Dave. I don't know if you've ever heard him.
Amazing. Did you get one of those?
I know, not yet. I'm trying. Yeah. He's amazing. And he said it's strange, isn't it? The harder I work, the luckier I get. Yeah. And it's just, there's a direct correlation between it.
But it's funny because I think you can direct your work in a way that plays for luck more. And I think that forcing yourself to get out and about is really important. Like particularly as the business grows and like the to-do list grows and the temptation or the force like pinning you to your desk becomes greater and greater. That's almost when the getting out and about becomes even more important. So like prime example, right? Our almond butter. I spent 18 months looking for almonds good enough to put on almond butter. Couldn't find them. Didn't almost give up, but like was thinking about it. And then I snuck into a dinner party that had 2,000 people at it. And I sat next to a guy called Jose, who happened to be an almond grower in Portugal, who grew the best almonds in the world. And we use his almonds. So it's like that.
Yeah, it's so true. You never know what will... I mean, that is... I was talking to you about my two sons at uni. That, for me, is the best advice. It's always worth meeting somebody. Cause
for sure.
You might just have a nice cup of coffee and that be the end of it. But in my experience, something always good comes out of it eventually. Maybe not straight away.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's hard, isn't it? People, and that's always been my worry over COVID, where people have got a bit insular and I can do it all through my computer. I can do it through that. It's like, no, meet people.
Definitely can't. And it becomes harder as you grow. Because the opportunity cost of getting out and about becomes greater. So you're thinking like, I could be doing this, could be doing that.
Yeah.
That's why it's easier at the start. So there's that. And then the last one, which there's two more. So one is just about team and like over investing in and being deliberate with team earlier. I think we probably I personally and the biz got hurt from that, and we're now in a great space because we're more deliberate with team. And the last one is that, and this is more as you get a bit further along the journey, but like I am a firm believer in the fact that magic tends to lie in the stuff that doesn't scale. And it's very easy to engage with stuff that doesn't scale in the early days, which is why early stage business is often so magical. It's the era of like handwritten notes, like dropping deliveries off for the founder, calling up your customers. And then as you grow and as like data and measurement and like impact becomes higher up the agenda, like do less better becomes higher up the agenda, which is right that it does to some extent. I still think it's very important to leave a carve out for stuff that is not high impact scale, because that's where, like personal interactions, the minced pine nut butter, 3,000 jars, like was at the time an ultimately unscalable activity and it's now become mega.
Yeah.
Happens.
Yeah. But it is, and they're the bits that people remember and share, isn't it?
Yeah,
and so
sure.
the whole brand gets a halo of small things. But again, that human is interesting, isn't it? You as a product that basically is in retail. I know you sell direct as well, but you're talking how important it is to meet people and get out there.
100%.
And that's where, but I know AI is coming and it's improving X, Y, and Z, but hopefully it could never...
frees up more time to do that as opposed to just kills us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, an AI can't bump into Jose at a lunch in London.
Yeah. Not yet.
who happens...
Give it 6 weeks.
Oh,
it's been pretty fast.
Don't say that.
Yeah.
We're not going to end on a down.
Yeah.
But it is, and it's interesting. And, thank you for being honest, because I think that's what people don't realise in terms of we've all gone through it. We might not know what it is, but you do have a burnout. You do get very down at times. And I think if you've got a belief, you keep driving it, don't you? But you've got to be careful about your health at the same time.
Yeah. It's the kind of like internal fire that ultimately comes from probably not a great place is ironically, I think, I was talking to someone like this morning, is like the greatest motivator on the planet. Like fear of failure, everyone talks about the cost of fear of failure. Fear of failure is the furnace. But if you're driven by that for too long, it can tip you over. And ultimately you have to find a more like wholesome
There has to be a balance, doesn't there? Otherwise, like you say, you'll always crave that kick that you never actually get sorted. So you will burn out completely.
Yeah.
Right. That sounds like a negative end, but it's not.
No,
it's great advice, isn't it?
I think so. It's funny, because we talked about your kids before this, and because I grew up in a medical family, there was always this. My parents, grandparents, they always overvalued like education and intellect. And even now, like one of the first questions my parents will ask about new friends, like what do they do at university? Which is wild, right? I think the number one thing you can give a child is like the realization of their passion and curiosity and dynamism. And
Yeah.
I think in the world of AI, where ultimately you can basically tech any capability stuff, it's the people that have the dynamism and like the curiosity and the kind of get up and goes. Oh, I hate that word, but
Right.
that, whatever the better word for that is, that will succeed.
But I think it is, isn't it? You know, I'm a bit older than you. The information that our kids now have at their fingertips, they don't have to learn anything.
Yeah.
But what they've got to be able to learn is how do you apply it for their own good. And we could get into a whole debate about what schools should be doing
Next
now.
time.
Is that actually saying, don't learn anything for an exam. How do you apply it? And I'm sure it's coming, but
Yeah. There's a lot of like, practical life stuff that is
we will leave it on that sage advice, Stuart
Good idea,
Macdonald.
Steve.
Thank you very much. I've loved that. And I know you might get a bit bored about talking about, well, I don't think you do actually, about peanut butter. That I found that absolutely fascinating. So thanks for sharing.
Thanks, Steve. Get more nervous about people finding it boring, but hopefully not.
Well, we'll find out. We'll get some comments on there. But yeah, get out there and buy some hot cross bun. What was it called?
Don't buy that one because we don't have many of those. Buy just normal ManiLife, deep roast
Okay,
peanut
fair
butter.
enough. Yeah.
But yeah.
Just tell them you know Stu. They'll be fine.
Exactly. Yeah, perfect.
Thank you very much, bud.